Okay, so good morning, guys. We are continuing from formal welcome. I didn't expect, like I said, I didn't expect so many people considering the weather, but it's good to see people in the class. So, like we are going to, so for those who were not there in the class in the last week, I request you guys to please participate in the class so that it makes the class interesting and uh, what do you say, less boring for you. Let me rephrase like that. Okay, so in today's class, we are supposed to be looking at two topics. One is a follow on from the previous class, which is perception. So I'll just keep referring to my notes here, so just ignore that. And in today's class, the main topic that we will start with is going to be perception. Okay, so I want you guys to tell me. I'm sure you've heard this word before. So perception से ज़्यादा personality and behavior perception we perception नहीं अभी we have already covered it in partial, so we'll look at behavior today as part of OB. This is a behavior in two dimensions. One is the dimension of the individual, so our own behavior towards our colleagues, towards our friends, towards our customers, towards our bosses, towards our company. Those are the individual behaviors that we'll look at, and we'll also look at, to an extent, how the company behaves with its employees. Because if we treat the company as an entity, so think of it like it has a personality, and that is what organization behavior is all about. What is the personality of that organization? You are individuals, the organization also is an individual, so you will have two companies who would probably be selling perhaps exactly the same product. Let's say we say JK tires and Apollo tires, exactly the same product they are selling in the market to perhaps exactly the same customer. Yet the way they interact with their employees, their distributors, their customers is different. And that is where the behavior of the organization comes in. So we'll look at behavior from both these perspectives. So the first perspective is what is behavior, and we'll start with the behavior of the employee towards his or her organization. And we are always assuming that you have joined that company out of choice, which means that you want to be in that organization. Nobody is forced you into that organization. That's the assumption that we are making. But obviously, everybody has individual challenges. Some of you may be doing a job because it's expected of you. Some of you may have maybe looking in it from an economic perspective. Some of you might be looking that we don't want to get bored at home. That's a different story altogether. We are not looking at your reasons for joining that company. We are looking at it. Think of it like ऐसे एक story शुरू होती है ना. When a new serial comes, the story starts. Some things are expected. So you are in the company. The day opens, and we are starting from that moment when you are in that company. So when we talk of your behavior, like I said, is how you interact or how you react to your colleagues, your bosses, your subordinates, your customers, your distributors, your suppliers. Remember हमने last time एक वो stakeholders किया था? All of those stakeholders, how you react with them is part of your behavior as an employee. And obviously, all of you will have your personal and professional behavior. So in personal life, you may behave in a completely different manner. In your professional life, you may end up behaving in a completely different manner. We are concerned only with the professional behavior. So you as an employee is your behavior that we are looking at, right? So when we talk of behavior, can you give me some positive behavioral characteristics which you will show to your organization? Can anybody think of a possible? I'll give you one example. So let's say your organization says that you have to come on time. Reporting time is, let's say, 9:30 in the morning, and you consistently reach late. What perception will it give to your boss? So उसको क्या दिख रहा है उससे? What does the boss start to read into it? Perhaps he's not committed, perhaps he's not dedicated, perhaps he has time management issues. Maybe the second way of looking at it from a human perspective would be, अब मैं अभी आपको मैंने पार्शियल डेटा दिया, सो लेट्स से 9:30, सो लेट्स से द ऑफिस टाइम इज 9:30 to 6 p.m. ठीक है, एंड दिस गाय कम्स एट 9:40 बट ही ऑलवेज स्टेज टिल 6:30 p.m. अब बताओ बिहेवियर, अब बताओ. So you have to look at everything from different perspectives. ठीक है, but the point that you guys need is what is usually accepted. So you are right, this is the human way of looking at management, but sometimes when we talk of OB, the method, the position that you guys gave is what is the common position. So your actions are linked to your behavior. Another way looking at it would be you are a reliable employee, meaning कि आपको कोई एक काम दिया, you deliver on deadlines. Is that positive? That would be a positive behavior towards the organization, right? We are following the timelines, deadlines, commitments that we have made. We are following them. That is again actions and behavior. Okay? Can you give me other examples of how you go back to your experience would be, since all of you are freshers, anybody with work ex in this room? Work experience है किसी का? All of you are freshers, just undergraduate students, right? So go back to your school. Let's use that as a reference point. Okay, hey guys, can we have the electronic devices off, please? Electronic devices off, please. Thank you. So let's take your school as an example. Now you had good teachers, you had bad teachers. Right? Accepted. You have a good school management, you have bad management. That's there for everybody. Now, can you give me examples of how your teachers or administrative officers in your particular schools, especially if you've had switched schools, so you have two perspectives. Can you tell me how would you define that teacher A is good and teacher B is not so good? What would you be looking at? वही आपका यहाँ पे professional behavior match. Anybody wants to try? Example. मेरे साथ यही होता है, पॉइंट दोगे तो मेरे को एग्जाम्पल साथ में चाहिए. So example, please. Okay, let me repeat the question. My question is, let's take your school as an organization. That's the only experience you have of a professional organization at the moment. Future, you'll join your company, you'll have your experiences, you'll find bosses whom you really want to kill, beat up, throw outside the window, and there are some bosses you would really like to worship. Happens everywhere. That's life. So my question is that when I talk of good behavior of an employee showing as a professional, showing good behavior through his or her actions towards the stakeholders, in this case you being the customers of the teacher, the students. So you have in your mind some teachers whom you would call as good teachers, some as bad teachers. What defines a good teacher and what defines a bad teacher? That's my question. So one point came was the way they teach or the way they explain. Okay, can anybody else give me another example of good behavior? Hanji? Example. Mm-hmm. So that is again actions and behavior. Good point. Anybody, can you give me an example of a bad teacher? Hanji? Regimented. Too strict is also not acceptable. We want the teacher to be, there's a very fine line between strict and unstrict, lenient. So that's a very fine line. एक होता है, then there is always this case of the teacher's pet or the teacher having lots of students. वही सारा काम उन्हीं students को मिलता है, अच्छे वाला. Right. So you have biases. So in your behavior in an organization, how does the bias show? So in your teacher's case only, for example, the bias would perhaps show in the sense that the student whom he or she liked, perhaps they end up getting better marks, perhaps they end up getting better opportunities, perhaps they end up getting better certificates. Do we want this kind of a bias in an organization? We don't. But unfortunately, It is always there. And there is no organization in the world which can say that I am a bias free organization. It is impossible. And there is no human being on the planet who can say that I have no biases. The very fact that I have a bias against biases is a bias. So it's a very circular thing. So what the organization can do is they cannot remove these, but they can minimize or mitigate. So for example, you have an employee who undergoes, you have 10 employees who undergo a performance appraisal process. And obviously, two of them are favorite employees, they get 10 on 10, and the others get scores depending. And there must be one or two employees जो उनको पसंद नहीं है, they'll always be towards the bottom end of the scale. So we have something like this. And then these are the two hated employees, these are the two loved employees, and everybody else falls somewhere in between. Now, how can an organization mitigate this thing? Which is where you come with the key word here being system. You cannot have one boss just on whenever he or she has a mood, just gives you whatever marks he wants to give you. There are steps to it. So there are ways in which I can minimize or mitigate the impact of biases in behavior. We'll look at a few biases just to give you guys a perspective on what I'm talking about. But when we talk of behavior, these are some of the things where we see. Now, can you give me examples of negative behavior? And I'm sure you've all had friends in school who have done weird things. Can you give me examples of negative behavior and then we turn them into corporate negative behavior? One is always late. So it may work if I have an office job where I have a desk job. Nobody is coming to me. But imagine I am the driver of a Delhi metro train and I'm always late. Can I do? Will it be a good behavior on my part? Why not? मैं क्लास 5 मिनट लेट आ रहा हूँ चलेगा. But if my train is late, it has a knock-down effect on thousands of people. So behavior and impact are also some things which you guys need to keep in mind. The impact of that negative behavior. Now let's say I'll give you an example. So I am an employee who is okay. Let's take this one. So I'm an employee who's in the company that makes these projectors. Okay? I have built the projector. It's working fine. It has been tested to verify that I have done a good job. It's working fine. But मैंने उसके अंदर मैं उसमें कोई मैंने ह्यूमरस पिक्चर डाल दी कि हर थोड़ी थोड़ी देर बाद एक पिक्चर फ्लैश करेगी. That's a very basic example of sabotage. और उससे क्या होगा? आप किसको ब्लेम करोगे? Will you blame the employee? No, you will blame the company that they haven't done their quality control properly. Another example could be theft. There are lots of employees who have a very creative understanding of office property. Things vanish from their offices, which suddenly turn up at their homes. Pens, stationery, office key files, that those kind of things have a very bad habit of disappearing. I won't use the word theft in this case, but I will use the word of creative ownership pattern. And I'll give you one example. उससे मुझे याद आया. You all heard of this company? Hindustan Motors? Which product did they used to make? तो सबने सुना है यार. Come on, Hindustan Motors तो सबने सुना हुआ है. The ambassador. ठीक है, ambassador तो सबने देखी हुई है, सुनी हुई है. Right? Everybody is aware of it. So there was this article which I was reading. उससे मुझे याद आया. So they had their plant. It is somewhere in near Calcutta. मुझे exact जगह नहीं याद, but I do know for a fact that it is somewhere near Calcutta in West Bengal. Now I'm not making any judgments on West Bengal ऐसा है, Bengalis ऐसे, blah blah blah. It's just an example which I want to share with you that when the plant was in operation, one of the reasons Hindustan Motors died out was that the negative behavior of the employees overpowered the positive behavior of other employees. So one example where that article was quoting was that employees were taking the parts of the car, hiding them, taking them outside the plant and selling them in the black market. And the money was going into their pocket and Hindustan Motors was being written off कि आपका ये part खराब है and we have destroyed. Think of it like an Amazon package which comes. So आपको Amazon package है, आपको deliver हो गया, लेकिन package के अंदर आपको, let's assume you, I'm sure you all heard stories of mobile phone being replaced by soap. I'm sure you've all heard stories of that और घूमती रहती है internet पे. True है नहीं है I don't know, but that is an example of negative behavior. Another example could be अभी एक कौन सा था recent में है, okay, anybody who makes a hoax phone call कि office में bomb है. You've had that those experiences. People have done it on aircraft also. अभी last week ही हुआ था एक SpiceJet की flight के साथ हुआ था, then the guy got arrested. Again, negative behavior. What all of this does is it creates a culture in the organization where people assume that okay, doing a good job, doing a time bound job, doing an effective job, doing an honest job is less important than say for example being friends with the boss. So boss मेरे को बोलते ऑफिस टाइम पे जाओ मेरे डॉगी को पार्क में घुमा लाओ and you go and do that. So in that boss's case you become this employee. But from the organization's perspective, what are you doing? Both you and your boss are indulging in negative behavior. You because the boss is telling you to do it, and the boss because he is misusing the property. In this case, your time is the company's property. He is misusing that time for personal gain. और ये unfortunately or the other, somehow or the other, the trend is that in government companies this trend is a little bit more, but ऐसा नहीं है कि private companies में नहीं होता है. It is just a matter of opinion, but it is little bit more in that example. Okay, so when we look at some parts of behavior, negative behavior, tardiness मैंने कर लिया, abuse कर लिया, हमने देख लिया. Okay, now let's look at which factors influence your behavior. So one we discussed professional life का आपका behavior will be influenced by why you joined that company. That will influence your behavior. If you've joined, if it's your dream company, how will your behavior be towards that company? You'll do all the good behaviors towards that company and the company will get to know and you will tend to get good promotions, good future prospects if you end up behaving well with that organization because it's your dream company. But sometimes you will end up in a situation where you have to join a job because it is a necessity. And in that case, because it is a necessity, आपका मन नहीं है लेकिन आप वो काम कर रहे हो. तो आप लोग मुझे बताइए that अगर आपको ऐसा काम करें जिसमें आपका मन नहीं है, what happens to your performance and the output quality? Both of them suffer, right? हमें भी पता है कभी जो चीज नहीं मन होता हम उसको बड़े बेमन से करेंगे तो ऑब्वियसली उसकी क्वालिटी पे इम्पैक्ट पड़ता है. इट कुड बी, लेट्स से यू वर गिवन एन असाइनमेंट इन स्कूल जो आपका करने का मन नहीं था, रो पीट के गूगल से कॉपी करके जमा तो कर दी, बट इज दैट समथिंग विच हैज हेल्प द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन और हेल्प यू? नो, ऑल यू डन इज जस्ट टिक, मैंने काम कर दिया, टिक. टिकिंग अ चेकलिस्ट isn't the right way of judging behavior. Professional good behavior you can judge with what do they do extra. आप कभी किसी, you go to any of these Airtel, Vodafone, Jio stores and all, अपने फोन के लिए आप लोग जाते होंगे, वहां पे how they interact with you is this example. Do they do something extra for you? Does that employee do something extra for you? Are you doing something extra for your colleagues? Are you doing something extra for your customer? All those kind of things come in. This is where we look at, this is a linkage between these two go hand in hand. Only when you are doing positive behavior will you be able to do something extra for your stakeholders. Let me use the term general term. Okay. Another example of factors influencing behavior is the organization Culture. Now, what is the culture of the organization? It's basically a set of standardized policies, practices, which people assume कि यार इस company में ऐसे ही होता है. And they tend to respond accordingly. And one good example of organization culture would be uh, biases, number one, and number two could be and there could be one more. Three examples of negative behavior which is percolated by the culture of the organization. And this determines how successful or how unsuccessful that organization is going to be eventually down the road. So, this is where the starting part of our behavior story comes in. Okay. Now, there was something on the laptop which I could have shown you, but then that would take time in projecting and connecting everything. So, I'll just give you that example in brief. Okay. All I want you is that you guys just pay a little bit of attention to that example. And this is about organization culture. Okay. So, imagine a scenario there is a cage with five monkeys in it. Okay. There's a scientific experiment going on. There's a cage with five monkeys in it. At the end of the cage, so think of it like this is the cage. At the end of the cage, there is a ladder, and on this ladder, there are bananas. Okay, and there's a shower which is over the ladder, and there are five monkeys here. One, two, three, four, and five. ठीक है, ये monkey है. समझ लेना my drawings. Okay, so I'm not drawing anything. So there are these five monkeys, and every time a monkey climbs the ladder to get the banana, sorry, this is the wrong one. Sorry, the shower is here. So every time a monkey climbs the ladder to get a banana, which is what the monkey is going to do, that is their default behavior, the other four are sprayed with cold water. Okay, that's the experiment. Okay. Now, after 2-3 tries, what do you think will happen? They create the pattern is created that when we are take the banana, the others will get showered with cold water. So क्या होगा अगर अब ये monkey जाना चाहता है बनाना लेने के लिए, these other four monkeys will discourage him or stop him, and in the case of the experiment they ended up beating the monkey. So उसके बाद वो नहीं किया. ठीक है. अब हमने क्या किया, हमने इस monkey को remove कर दिया. ये चार रह गए, and now we have monkey number 6. ठीक है. Now monkey number 6, what does he do when he enters the building? When he enters the cage, he also goes to get the banana. ठीक है. Standard monkey behavior, उसको नहीं पता कि banana मिलने से क्या होता है. And now these other four monkeys, of course, beat him up. And he doesn't know why. But he says, ठीक है, मेरे को केला लेने नहीं जाना. Slowly, over the experiment, all of 5 of these monkeys are replaced with 5 brand new monkeys. And none of them know the reason for getting the banana. And this shower has been switched off now. ठीक है. अब सबको पता है कि मेरे को बनाना लेने जो जाएगा उसको मुझे मारना है. मुझे ये नहीं पता क्यों मारना है, बट मारना है. एंड दैट इज समटाइम्स हाउ ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस कल्चर्स डेवलप. आपको पता नहीं है क्या करना है, बॉस ने बोला यही होगा, ऐसे ही होता है जी. एंड दैट इज वेयर द प्रॉब्लम कम्स फ्रॉम एन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ग्रोथ पर्सपेक्टिव. द मोमेंट the organization stops taking feedback and stops being open to improvement, we have a severe problem with its future. This is where behavior of an organization, how it develops. हमारी कंपनी में ऐसे ही होता है जी. आई एम श्योर यू हर्ड ऑफ दिस स्टेटमेंट मेनी टाइम्स. हमारे स्कूल में ऐसे ही होता है जी. बट डज दैट गिव द कस्टमर ऑन द अदर हैंड एन आइडिया कि यार आपकी कंपनी में ऐसे तो या तो उसको सुधार लो या मैं कंपनी छोड़ देता हूँ. आई लीव द कंपनी एज अ कस्टमर. And that is a scenario which is bad for the company. If every customer starts leaving, then what will happen to the company? And ये सबसे बड़ी problem आती है in companies which are in the customer service domain. बैंक का ब्रांच ले लो, आप एक एयरटेल वोडाफोन जियो ले लो, जो आपको गलत सर्विस देता है या जिसकी सर्विस आपको अच्छी लगती है, व्हाट डू यू स्विच आउट. ऐसा तो है नहीं दैट यू आर नॉट स्टेइंग विद दैट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन फॉर एवर. एंड आई एम श्योर यू गाइज ऑल्सो नो कि आई एम श्योर मेनी ऑफ योर पेरेंट्स वुड प्रोबेबली एंड अप रिटायरिंग from their first job. Those of whose parents are in jobs, perhaps they would end up retiring from their first and only job. They'll do 30, 35, 40, depending on when they joined the company. They would end up retiring. And let's assume the retirement age is 60. They end up retiring at the age of 60 from their one and only company. Do you think that will happen to you guys? No, आप लोग एटलीस्ट दो तीन आप लोग स्विच करेंगे. दैट्स अ फैक्ट ऑफ टुडेज लाइफ. सो इवन एज एन एम्प्लॉय, if you switch out because the organization culture is bad the way we were telling it, उससे किसका लॉस हो रहा है, right? And because you are not behaving correctly, उससे किसका लॉस हो रहा है? कस्टमर जा रहा है तो फिर भी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का लॉस है. So it is in the organization interest on both sides to keep you as an employee happy. हैप्पी का ये मतलब नहीं है कि आपको घर पे बैठ के सैलरी मिल रही है. No, that doesn't mean happiness. Please, there are many people who tend to assume happiness is only that. कि हम घर पे बैठे और हमारी सैलरी हर मंथ के एंड पे क्रेडिट हो जाती है, हमें कोई काम नहीं करना पड़ता. सॉरी, दैट्स नॉट हैप्पीनेस. हैप्पीनेस इंक्लूड्स अ लॉट ऑफ मोटिवेशन. पे जब हम जाएंगे, आई थिंक यूनिट 2 या यूनिट 3 में आपके सिलेबस में, व्हेन वी टॉक ऑफ मोटिवेशन इन ओबी, then we will look at how to keep you guys happy. Now, as an employee, all of us want that. मेरा भी मन करता है मैं घर पे बैठा रहूं और मेरी सैलरी आती रहे. At the back of our mind, everybody has that is their ideal of happiness. मेरा perhaps could be that I want to be on a beach in Goa, sipping drinks on the lounge, and my salary keeps coming. मुझे काम ना करना पड़े. Right? We all have that. We all have a similar dream at the back of our mind, and that's fact of life. Let's accept it. But that's not reality. It's just a dream. But when I'm working in an organization, I also have some realistic dreams. मेरा बॉस मेरे से प्यार से बात करेगा, मेरे को जो टास्क मिलेगा वो मेरी पसंद का होगा, इन द सेंस दैट आई लाइक. सो अगर आप मुझे बोले फॉर एग्जांपल, गो एंड टीच स्टैटिस्टिक्स, ठीक है, मेरे बॉस ने बोला कि मैं स्टैट्स पढ़ाना चाहता हूँ. मे बी आई हैव द स्किल्स, मे बी आई डोंट हैव द स्किल्स, बट आई एम नॉट हैप्पी डूइंग इट. दैट्स नॉट माई पेपर. If something is not my paper, it will have an impact on my comfort level. In your schools, did you guys have fresher teachers? Somebody who just started their career versus somebody who's been doing it for 20, 25 years. Difference दिखता था ना उनके अप्रोच में. So वो अगला वाला लर्न कर रहा है. बट वो तब अच्छी तरह से लर्न करेगा when you are giving him or her the paper of their choice. If you end up giving me paper, okay, ठीक है, मैं रो पीट के कर लूंगा उसको. Again, it's the same thing. जो मैं मन से करूंगा और जो मैं बेमन से करूंगा. Again, it has an impact on both the organization as well as its stakeholders. So happiness here doesn't mean the dream, but practical stuff. ठीक है, I am a lady employee. I go and my colleagues who are male are not circulating those negative jokes जो होते हैं ना. I'm sure you've seen them on WhatsApp. घूमते रहते हैं. Things like that are not circulated within my own group. No, nobody is doing morphing of my pictures. I expect a certain level of respect. I expect my salary to be credited on my account on time. I expect my boss to treat me decently. I expect my subordinates to listen to the commands that I'm giving. That constitutes happiness. That is part of the organization culture. And that's what shows. So when I say that X company is a good employer, these are some of the things which I am referring to. Okay? The quality of how the organization is doing. And because it's a good employer, chances are it's a successful company as well. Now take for example, take two companies, take Twitter and take Facebook. Both of them have had layoffs. Tech में इस time तो every company is laying off. So I'm not blaming company X over company Y. Layoffs को मैं भी count ही नहीं कर रहा कि वो क्यों होते हैं. वो हमारा डोमेन नहीं है उस पे बात करना भी. But coming back, why do we say? So let me ask you, which is right now having a better organization culture, Facebook or Twitter? Why not Twitter? Because Twitter में employees are unhappy because there is a a pattern of uncertainty in their business. And Elon Musk, as a boss, does not inspire certainty. He is a maverick. Good thing, he does unique things in the world, but it's bad from the point of view of employee job satisfaction because I'm always living under fear. A company which promulgates this kind of a behavior in their organization culture is not going to stay successful for a long time. And I'll give you one, you guys can watch that movie if you haven't done. It's an old movie, one of Ranveer Singh's initial movies, Rocket Singh. I don't know if you guys have seen it. किसी ना किसी ये Amazon Prime या Netflix कहीं ना कहीं एक है. इसको जाके देखना एक बार. Whenever you get the chance. Whenever you get the chance, watch this movie. It will give you a good perspective of organization culture. ठीक है. एक और मैं आपको और कौन सी दूँ for organization culture because you guys need that background ना because you don't have a work ex. So चलो अभी रॉकेट सिंह करते हैं मुझे कोई याद आएंगी तो आई विल शेयर देम विद यू एरन ब्रोकोविच चलेगा नहीं okay you can also try this one another very old movie but only for a little bit not from the romantic movie point of view it's a I think 1990 की मूवी है ये और ये किसी ना किसी नेटफ्लिक्स amazon प्राइम पे पड़ी है ये देखना अगेन लुक एट इट ओनली फ्रॉम द कल्चर सो इट्स अ होटल वहां पे एक होटल के सीन्स है कोई 15-20 सिर्फ उन्हीं पे ध्यान देना इफ यू डोंट वांट टू वॉच द एंटायर मूवी डोंट जस्ट वॉच ओनली दोस पार्ट्स अगेन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन कल्चर एम्प्लॉय बिहेवियर एंड इंटरेक्शन इन व्हाट ऑल दैट वी डिस्कस्ड राइट नाउ हम उसको बात कर रहे हैं ठीक है ओके नाउ what are the factors that influence the behavior of the employee so we have age we have gender. I'm just jotting down a few of them. We'll not have time to discuss all of them, but we will discuss 3-4 of them. Skills level और tenure ले लेते हैं ठीक है एक्सपीरियंस टेन्योर सेम थिंग मैं उसको टेन्योर कह रहा हूँ टेन्योर थोड़ा सा वो वर्ड कॉमन वर्ड लगता है ठीक है सो नाउ हाउ विल द एज ऑफ द एम्प्लॉय impact their behavior towards the organization young old middle age whatever age you want to call it how is age a factor that impacts employee behavior maybe so excited ko now let's translate it into a very positive term he has more enthusiasm he'll be willing to devote extra time to the organization he'll be willing to try out new things right so enthusiasm bolo so excitement ki jagah let's use enthusiasm it looks better that's all right so enthusiasm age ke sath there's another advantage another thing with age so these two things will also go hand in hand age and tenure will go hand in hand usually if I am young I will not have too much of experience and with sometimes with experience na it just makes you better it has an impact on your skills level so everything gets related to each other right so if you have an older employee chances are that he or she will be more abrupt क्योंकि उनकी एज में दे फील लाइक यार तुम्हें आना चाहिए ये चीज मे perhaps they may not take the time to train you well but a good employee at the middle age of his life he or she will be good at training juniors too senior an employee sometimes they lack the I would say the right tools to interact with a very young employee because they are from a completely different generation. Take perhaps your example, take in your own homes, for example, who would you like to listen to more? Your father or your friends? Whom do you have to listen? Father. But like it depends on person to person. I'm not making any judgment, but the way a father might be able to understand you would be because you are his child. But there will always be an, a gap in terms of their perception levels. For example, if you look at your fathers, for example, how tech savvy are they going to be compared to you? So there's a difference. So when I do online teaching, for example, there will be some colleagues who are of an older generation for whom online teaching was a big challenge. You guys have all had online teaching in your school. Remember the teachers who struggled the most? Chances are they would be the older teachers. Because for them, acquiring a completely new skill becomes challenging. ऐसा नहीं है कि it is not possible, but it is challenging. So that is where this whole thing comes around. Okay, now can gender have an impact on the employee's behavior towards the organization? Can you give me an example? Think if it does impact or it doesn't impact. Either ways, think. I can give you one example. कभी ध्यान से देखना. Usually speaking, I don't know why it has happened, but typically, if you go to any office and there's a receptionist sitting there, chances are they are a girl. They are a female employee. Majority of the time, that's the reality. Good, bad, we don't know. But that can have an impact. So typically, what I have seen is that female customer service employees typically tend to listen to you better. Perhaps it's just my experience. Right or wrong, that's what experience I've had, and we cannot challenge it. वो है तो है, खत्म. So it could have an impact. So if you have an employee, so a female boss might be able to understand why a new mother needs to go home early because she's just had a small baby. She's joined the office, fine. After my maternity leave, she's joined. But a lady boss might be more sympathetic to that young mother, and maybe 5:30 होती है वो बोलेगी आप 5:25 पे ही चले जाओ. She'll be more sympathetic because perhaps she's undergone that experience herself. A male boss, on the other hand, might or might not be so sympathetic. ऐसे नहीं कि नहीं होते. It's just that there's a better perception to it. It's just as simple as that. They can relate to that experience that new employee is undergoing. और उससे क्या होगा? If I'm able to relate, और मेरा boss अगर if my wife was in that situation and her boss tells her यार 5 मिनट जल्दी चली जाएगा, कोई बात नहीं, हम संभाल लेंगे. What would be her perception about her boss? अच्छा कि बुरा? अच्छा. And what will happen when the boss says यार थोड़ी देर एक्स्ट्रा रुक, ये ना काम फटाफट करना, आप 5 बजे तक कर देना फिर चले जाना घर. What will happen to her time bound performance? It will improve क्योंकि उसके पास वो प्राइज मिल गया. काम टाइम पे खत्म करो तो मैं घर जल्दी चली जाऊंगी. You getting my point? So it will just create a better employer, better boss and subordinate relationship. As simple as that. So gender might have an impact there. Same could be said from here. Similar. ठीक है? So these are some of the reasons. So let's move on quickly. यहाँ पे हमने ज़्यादा टाइम लगा दिया है. Okay, then diversity हो गया. Perception हमने अभी cover नहीं किया ना क्लास में भी. करा था last class में नहीं. Okay, then let's quickly move into the next topic from behavior. So this is my brief on behavior. More material I will share in the notes which I will share with you. उसके अंदर ज़्यादा material है और बाकी your SLM and your textbooks are always there to catch up. This is the discussion part. इसके बाद it's more on theoretical elements and more examples you can take to understand yourself. Okay. Now, I'm sure you've heard of this word. What is perception? A viewpoint of view, the way I see the world. Think of it like the way I see the world. So one person, so if you have, for example, you're driving on the road and there's somebody who's jumping a red light. ठीक है, अब आपका उस पर डिफरेंट व्यू पॉइंट होगी. कोई कहेगा अच्छा वो भाग गया, मैं फंस गया ट्रैफिक में. कोई कहेगा क्यों जंप की, इट इज नॉट सेफ. somebody may say it is illegal. Example वही है, but the way you see it is different from the way everybody else sees it. So your perception is your own perception, and that also has an impact on how you have your yeah. This is what we are all concerned with, and the relationship between the company and the customer. ठीक है. So this is where perception comes in. थोड़ा बहुत theoretical है इसका. So what perception included? Perception is basically like this. So this is you, and this is where the input comes. So it comes here, and I'm sure physics में आप लोगों ने वो experiment किए थे ना, prism के साथ where it diffracts the light. Think of this space as being full of those प्रिज्म, और ये जो प्रिज्म्स हैं दे आर डिस्टॉर्टिंग हाउ यू आर सीइंग रियलिटी. सो अगर मेरे को बोला जाता है, फॉर एग्जाम्पल इट कुड बी, so let me take a very simplistic life example. So let's say you see your parents, your father slapping your mother on a regular basis क्योंकि वो उनकी wife है and that's culturally acceptable. What will happen to you down the road? You have two choices. One is you will replicate क्योंकि आपने वही देखा है, या आप उसका बिल्कुल उल्टा करोगे, आप बिल्कुल अपनी वाइफ पे हाथ नहीं उठाओगे. That's again perception. How you see that stimulus. और एंड परसेप्शंस चेंज अक्रॉस जनरेशंस, दे चेंज अक्रॉस जेंडर, और आपकी खुद की परसेप्शंस चेंज होंगी विद योर लाइफ एक्सपीरियंसेस. So even perceptions don't remain the same. So these prisms will keep changing. So we have selection, we have distortion, we have filtration. So selective होता है. अब आप जब न्यूज देखते हैं, do you listen to, so when you read a newspaper, do you read the entire newspaper page to page? No, some of you will prefer the sports section, some of you will prefer Delhi news, some of you will prefer, कई न्यूज़पेपर्स में होता है वो opinions वाला कॉलम होता है, बहुत सारे opinions होते हैं. Some people prefer that. Some would go straight to the business page. Some would completely disregard the main paper and go to HT City or Delhi Times. That is, so you want to see, you want to hear, you want to read only what you like. So choice, taste, even in watching movies, even in eating food, everywhere you are doing selection. Now what is filtration? Filtration पहले लेते हैं, फिर distortion पे आ जाएंगे. What is filtration?
So selected amount
So
of information.
by filtration I mean that I always leave अब अपने घर पे देख लेना, आपका जो आरओ का फिल्टर है पानी का, उसकी वो ट्यूब भर जाती है थोड़े दिन बाद. That is what has been left behind. It is giving you pure. So in this case, we wanted to actually do the filtering, but in reality, we want to have the complete picture. अगर आप फॉर एग्जाम्पल कोई एक, अब आप जैसे आपको कभी ध्यान से देखना है, यू गाइस डू दैट स्टडी, मैं आप लोगों को हिंट देता हूँ. ओके, टेक एनी न्यूज, एनी इंपॉर्टेंट न्यूज. सो लेट्स से टुडे देयर इज दिस होल न्यूज रनिंग अराउंड ऑन हिंडनबर्ग रिसर्च एंड अदानी. आई एम श्योर यू आर ऑल अवेयर ऑफ इट. कोई है जिसको ये पता नहीं है कि ये चीज एग्जिस्ट कर रही है इस वर्ल्ड में आज की डेट में? अगर नहीं पता है तो प्लीज स्टार्ट रीडिंग द न्यूज. Okay, and I'll give you the different perspectives. So if you look at now, I will not take names, but pick up various news channels, pick up various newspapers, और फिर देखना किसका क्या perspective है. Some news channels will be like, so अभी मैं कहीं जा रहा था, कहीं मैं सुबह आज कहीं मैं गया था, so there somebody was playing a recording, कोई WhatsApp पे आई थी उनको, about so the title was, मुझे पूरा याद नहीं, मैं आधा सुन रहा था. So अदानी ग्रुप की घिनौनी हरकतें. And the moment they use a word, एक तो पहले I do the same thing, I just burst out laughing. जैसे मुझे ये वर्ड दिखते हैं मेरे को हंसी पहले आती है, but then I'm like, so this person has a perspective. Perhaps he's a shareholder who's lost money yesterday in the stock market, day before yesterday in the stock market. Perhaps somebody will like, हाँ करो करो, if I'm a short seller, मेरे तो अच्छा है मैंने आज शेयर बेच दिए, कल मैं लो प्राइस पे उठा लूँ, I learn money out of it. I'm very happy with negative news. Perception. Everybody has their own perspective. So I am a share trader, मेरे को पॉजिटिव न्यूज से बेनिफिट है कि मैं शेयर आज खरीद लूंगा, वो कल प्राइस में बढ़ जाएंगे. आई कैन ऑल्सो शॉर्ट सेल द शेयर्स इन एंटिसिपेशन कि कल कुछ गलत होगा, गलत न्यूज आएगी और वो शेयर्स प्राइस गिर जाएगा. सो आई विल एंड अप मेकिंग मनी. इफ आई एम एन एम्प्लॉय ऑफ अदानी ग्रुप, फॉर मी द प्रोसेस इज, यार मेरी कंपनी चलती रहेगी ना, मेरी जॉब रहेगी ना. बिकॉज देयर वाज दिस वन कलीग ऑफ माइन, मेरे को उनका एक चीज जरूर याद है मुझे उनकी. She always used to say that I'm not working for my job, I'm working for my EMI. That was what she used to say. What is her focus in life was working for her EMI, because she had just built a house, she had, her child had undergone a severe medical procedure and financially they were strained. So उनके केस में her necessity was that the job should be stable and my job is, कभी उसको ध्यान से देखना, everybody has perspectives, right? And as a result of those perspectives, We have filtration where we selectively listen to what we want to hear. So if I am एंटी कैपिटलिस्ट मैं सोशलिस्ट वर्ड नहीं यूज कर रहा हूं अभी आई एम एन एंटी कैपिटल आई डोंट लाइक wealth accumulation by huge companies. So I'm selectively going to read anything which says Adani Group is bad, Reliance Group is bad. I am selectively reading that. और उसमें भी मैं वही फिल्टर कर रहा हूँ जो मैं सुनना चाह रहा हूँ. हाँ, capitalists are bad, Adani Group is bad, share markets are bad, there is a political economic nexus. मुझे सिर्फ वही सुनाई देता है. That is filtration. And what that filtration does is distorts my view of the world. So आपको एक एग्जांपल में से तो only one example I'll give you which is hate crimes, where I hate you not because of who you are but because of who I believe you to be. और ये सबसे बड़ी चीज. Hate crime is something like where I hit upon or I attack somebody based on perhaps their religion, their gender, their race, their background, socio-economic background. I'm sure you've seen that in your school life as well. That is where the hate crime part comes. School में चलो इतना नहीं होता है, but when you go out in the world, it can become a big problem as well. So this is where the perception part comes in. I've explained the perceptual process also. Pygmalion effect आपको मिल जाएगा, इसमें कुछ नहीं है पढ़ने का. Okay. ये हमने कवर कर लिया. बॉस सबऑर्डिनेट रिलेशंस कर लिया. कंपनी कस्टमर रिलेशंस हमने कवर कर लिया. हाँ, एक प्रॉब्लम रहेगी इसमें बस. When you have these biases, na, so perception leads to biases. Okay. So I'll give you one example of a bias just to get everybody in the perspective. What is a bias? Can anybody help me with an example of a bias? I can give you one. I can give you one example right away. But can anybody help me? What is a bias?
Some not equal treatment towards something.
Right. So उसका example तो मुझे example.
For example, in medical study, they prefer police prefers that blacks be
Right, and that is a fact. You can see that in a variety of US police statistics. Disproportionately blacks are arrested for crimes. Disproportionately blacks are in jail. Disproportionately, A, it is a perception problem, it's a bias problem, and B, it is an economic problem. Okay, they belong to an economically depressed section of the population, which means they are more inclined to commit crimes, which means they are arrested more, which means they are put in prison more, and then later on everybody says, अरे यार blacks तो होती है ऐसे, they are good for nothing, we need to keep them away from our white suburban neighborhoods. समझ रहे हो, ऐसे बनता है bias, and that will have a problem. So this is a bias, this is incorrect, but it is reality. And then there is the bias that you will see how it shows. You will see that in problem in teamwork. Teamwork में सबसे बड़ी प्रॉब्लम आएगी आपकी biases. The moment you end up having biases as an individual, you will have problem in teamwork. And I'll give you one example. मेरे एक family friend है. He's about a year older to me. He's about a year to 2 years older than me. So around the same age group, but somehow or the other, he was only 1 year ahead of me in school. For some reason or the other, he was only 1 year. I think because his father was in the army, वो transfer होती रहती थी उनकी job, तो he missed out on sometimes. So वो मेरे से एक साल ही बड़ा निकला, pass out होने में. And he ended up doing engineering, so he had a 4 year course, और वो बिल्कुल मेरे बराबर निकला out. I had a 3 year course. हम दोनों बराबर निकले. And he wanted to join the Indian Army. वो उसका dream था शुरू से. His father was in the army, and his brother had also gone in the army. He also wanted to join. वो उसका dream था. But in his case, because of perceptual issues, which his psychological evaluation kept bringing out, he had to spend a lot of effort training himself to avoid these biases. And eventually, he got selected in the army. He met his dream, but it took him 3 tries because they wanted to judge whether he's going to be good at working in a team or not. And when, like मैंने आपको कहा ना, biases and perceptions can evolve. When his thinking evolved to match the needs of teamwork, it is only then that he got selected. So organizations in today's world are filtering or selecting or recruiting where they want to avoid people with perceptual and bias challenges because they want them to work together in a team, because that is what the modern organization is. I cannot sit in front of one laptop or one device 9:30 to 6 and go home. I have to meet with people from other departments. I have to meet customers. I have to meet clients. I have to interact with lots of people. There are going to be lots of meetings together. If I am an employee with biases, then I have an impact on teamwork, which has an impact on organization performance. घूम फिर के. So personal biases are a very negative thing that we as an organization need to ensure that we are able to filter. Otherwise, we will create a toxic work environment. और उसमें क्या होगा, टॉक्सिक वर्क एनवायरनमेंट में क्या होता है कि जो अच्छा एम्प्लॉय है वो सबसे पहले भागेगा. क्यों? There are two reasons. One is they are good, they don't like this negative behavior. One factor. What is the second factor? And this is the more practical one. कि अगर वो अच्छा एम्प्लॉय है तो उसको एक तो वो भी रहता है और एक उसको क्या होगा, ही और शी विल बी एबल टू गेट अ जॉब फास्टर क्योंकि वो अच्छा एम्प्लॉय है. अदर कंपनीज ऑल्सो वांट हिम, सो हिज एबिलिटी टू जंप will be faster, and what are you going to be left with in the organization? B and C grade employees. How will that impact the future of the organization? The organization will stagnate because it's the A level employees which take the organization above. Every organization has a mixture of A, B and C. तीनों कैटेगरीज होंगे और वो हर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में होता है. राइट और रॉन्ग उसमें हम नहीं जा रहे. दैट्स रियलिटी. But when the company has a toxic work culture, chances are the good employees are the ones who will leave the first, and as a result, it will have a dampening effect on the organization's growth. ठीक है, सो ये आपको बहुत एक चीज दिखेगी. यू विल सी दैट इन रियल लाइफ दैट इज देयर. देन वी हैव एक मुझे ये करनी थी आपके साथ. हाँ, okay, चलो ये मैं नेक्स्ट क्लास में कर लूंगा. ओके, देन वी हैव एटीट्यूड. तो बिहेवियर परसेप्शन के साथ आपका एक और टर्म आएगा विच विल बी एटीट्यूड. एंड एटीट्यूड विल शो इन योर वर्क परफॉर्मेंस एंड इट विल ऑल्सो शो इन योर टीम वर्क. सो कई आपको फॉर एग्जाम्पल आपको कई टीचर्स लगेंगे जो एक एटीट्यूड मारते हैं. आपको मिले होंगे अपनी लाइफ में एटीट्यूड मारते हैं. परहैप्स वो आपके लिए जो एटीट्यूड है वो उनके लिए नॉर्मल वे ऑफ ऑपरेशन है. उनको वही चीज दिखती है because for them that is the right thing to do. For you that's a wrong thing. So attitude क्या होता है? It can again change, and as future growing mature adults of the world, this is my suggestion to you. Advice suggestion थोड़ा सा मैं बुजुर्गों वाला साउंड कर रहा हूँ, please sorry, excuse that, but it is that always keep your attitudes flexible. I'm not saying you hide who you are as a person, but if your attitudes are flexible, you will be able to adjust well with changing operational realities. आपका बॉस चेंज हो गया, आपकी उस बॉस से बहुत अच्छी दोस्ती थी, वो बॉस चेंज हो गया. डज दैट मीन आप जॉब छोड़ दोगे अपनी? नहीं छोड़ सकते ना. बॉस चला गया, आप थोड़ी जाओगे उसके पीछे. कभी कभी हो जाता है कि यू कैन गो, बट मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द टाइम्स यू कैन नॉट गो, which means that you now have to adjust your attitude to work with the new boss. करना पड़ेगा ना. It's reality. You have to do it. That doesn't mean that you change who you are as a person. आप अपना काम करते रहो. But you may have to be so. If my current boss, so मेरे साथ ये हुआ था. So there was one boss who was like, his focus was work. आप चाहे ऑफिस का टाइमिंग 9 to 5:30 होता था कॉलेज का मेरे. So I would typically tend to reach about 9:30, but I would stay till about 6:30, and he had no problem with it. Like, बेटा काम से मतलब काम कर रहे हो तो रहो, लेट भी आ रहे हो आधा घंटा तो मैं कुछ नहीं कहूंगा आपको. बट ऑब्वियसली वाज लाइक कि घर पे बैठ के मत सैलरी लेना, वो वाला नहीं, इतना भी लीनियंसी नहीं. बट हाफ एन आवर ही डिडंट हैव अ प्रॉब्लम विद. Fine. So that was my working relationship with that gentleman. Now once the gentleman left, another management came, another boss came. So for a few days, perhaps I would have had to adjust my attitude. Fortunately, that boss himself was pretty work friendly, so मेरा काम चल गया उनके साथ भी. But you will encounter people with different challenges, different attitudes, different perception. और अगर आप flexible नहीं है तो आप उनके साथ काम नहीं कर पाएंगे. मैं ये नहीं कह रहा that you accept unethical behavior, that you accept bad behavior, but you have to be flexible and adjusting. एंड ये ओबी के लिए ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है फॉर यू एज एम्प्लॉइज. कीप योर माइंड ओपन. डोंट क्लोज योर सेल्फ विद बायसेस एंड perception. नहीं तो you will have a problem with teamwork and attitude. And these, in today's world, these are great on your, they have a great impact on your performance appraisal. आजकल majority of performance appraisals have one question: how good is your relationship with your peers and subordinates. और एक हम लोग करेंगे फीड, इसमें आपके में एक ही पेपर है, सो वी इसी में हम लोग सब डाल देंगे. देयर इज दिस थिंग कॉल्ड अ 360 degree appraisal. 360 degree appraisal means that if I am a boss, who is appraising me? My senior, my junior, my colleague and my customer. So now I get a feedback which is from everybody. Usually पहले क्या होता था, मैं और मेरा बॉस, हमारी दोस्ती है तो काम चल गया. बॉस ने मेरे को बोला मेरे डॉगी को घुमा दो पार्क में, मैंने घुमा दिया, बॉस इज हैप्पी विद मी. And I am getting performance appraisal and increment and everything. Everybody is happy. But in today's world, your attitude, your teamwork are a key element of your performance appraisal, which determines again your career path within that particular organization and perhaps for a few years in the future as well. So keep your attitude, keep your behavior managed. You will probably have a better experience as being an employee. Be flexible. That's the only part that comes out of all this discussion. So we'll stop here and we'll pick it up from this point in the next class. Thank you.